Alright guys, this is Jason, creator of IdolCam. Today we're in middle of nowhere in Huizhou, a city north of Shenzhen, about 1 hour away. I just thought this area is quite beautiful, so I want to just vlog out here. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen because it looks like there's a lot of these fish farms out here, little farms out here, and there's a lot of nice little white birds flying around, cranes. I believe they're just white cranes, so very beautiful. Today I'd like to talk to you guys maybe about video stabilizations, the different options of video stabilizations that's available in the market. So what fits your application the best, right? Maybe starting from way back then, right? Stabilization have been a challenge for many years until there's a device called Steadicam. Steadicam, a lot of professional videographer, filmmakers are still using Steadicams because one, they're able to stabilize very large camera equipments, and two, it's very smooth, it's very fluid. So a lot of gimbal, they are only stabilizing the 3-axis, so you're not stabilizing the up and down. So filmmakers, they still default, a lot of them still default to these Steadicams because of the flowing image is the image is flowing a lot smoother than a gimbal. Obviously gimbals are really good these days too, but to filmmakers, I believe that they are more pickier. They want that absolute flowness to the footage. So yeah, so a lot of bigger film sets, they still default to the Steadicams. But a lot of I do notice a lot of the filmmakers are doing a combination of Steadicam with a 3-axis gimbal because it's easier to balance the camera on the Steadicam, and also you get that 4-axis benefit, right? So basically it's a 4-axis stabilization, 4-axis gimbal. So I guess that doesn't apply to vlogging because these gears are way too big for the average user to use. Wow, okay, here's a pretty nice view. Very nice. Rice field, I believe. It looks like rice. Yeah, but so most of these larger stabilization units are not really meant for vlogging because there's no point of bringing a huge Steadicam setup, but I'm just offering some of the stabilization insights into where it kind of got started. So after the Steadicam, there's actually a lot of people back then, they're using gyroscopes, the actual mechanical gyroscopes that spins at a really high RPM, maybe 100,000 RPM or something like that, and it's in a canister. It's like a vacuum canister, and it spins really fast, and you can't move it because it's the momentum's keeping the wherever that it's spinning, it will keep that in place. So when you mount the camera on these mechanical gyros, it will fight any movements, right? So that's how you stabilize the camera. And a lot of helicopter filming are done with these mechanical stabilization. They're like a little egg-looking device. They're pretty expensive because they have to be extremely precise. So that is definitely not for you vloggers and most people, but only a specialized scenario. I'm only talking about the different devices that people use for stabilizations. So after these mechanical stabilizers, then the drone came into the scene, and where the 3-axis stabilization the 3-axis gimbal came from. I mean, 3-axis gimbal came in a long time ago, but they just don't have that same precise, really precise stabilization. Like, we have that for a long time. 3-axis gimbal been around for a long time, and then the more precise stabilization actually didn't came in from the drone. Actually, it actually came in from these helicopters, the really expensive Cineflex. They're more like 5-axis, 4-axis. A lot of movie sets, they have these really expensive gimbal with like gyroscope spinning in them. The later on version, they have kind of similar to what we have right now in the gimbal, electronic stabilization, electronic gimbal, and accelerometers. So that's all that got started. And then obviously the technology from these helicopters, the movie sets, we brought those technology down to the drones. Then with the drones, then we use that same technology, and then we bring it onto like camera gimbals, more affordable, very cheap, not cheap, but like a lot easier to create. So then now we have electronic stabilization. So it's all algorithm with the gyro and accelerometer senses the movement on the camera. With the camera, they do adjustments on the software, right? So you get stabilization through software. So it's EIS. There's another form of stabilization. You don't use the camera gyro info, and then you use like a software, like an editing software, a lot of editing software like Adobe Premiere, a lot of the more nicer video editing software, they have a post stabilization, so they don't read off the gyro information on the camera and they try to stabilize it, but a lot of time you do get a little warp here and there. It's not the best solution. It's it's better than none, but usually you want we prefer EIS is best done with something like Gopro. They have the gyro built in, and then they get the information from the gyro, and then with the information from the gyro they do the software post stabilization, so the correction is a lot better, more pleasing, more natural. So cameras like GoPro, the Insta360, DJI Osmo Action, and iPhone 12, those are fantastic EIS stabilizations. The only thing with EIS is, the great thing with EIS is you don't have an extra device to bring along with you, right? So you could create a device that's small and fits in the pocket easily. The only issue with the EIS is the image does have to be cropped in about 15 to 20%, so you do lose a little bit of image quality, and you also lose a little bit of cropping on your lens, right? So let's say you have a 24mm lens. When you crop it in, you probably get like a 30mm or sometimes less, depending on how much EIS you want to apply to your camera. So that's the one thing with EIS. It's fantastic, lightweight, but you do lose a little bit of image quality. Then you have gimbal, right? So let's say you have a smartphone, don't have a really good EIS, then you could pop it onto a 3-axis gimbal. Obviously 3-axis gimbals are amazing for stabilization. They're dedicated devices. The only little issue is, there's not an issue, but it's an extra device that you have to bring along. You get a little bit, you get more power though, because they have a huge battery grip, right? So you could usually, these gimbal will last about 5-6 hours, which is fantastic, right? You could just charge one time and use it for a few days of shooting, so which is fantastic. So the only thing is just the size is a little bigger, And if you're doing vlogging, it's kind of like, do you hold it out like this? If you hold it out like this, it will be heavy. If you put it on a selfie stick, it's also going to be heavy, because between a 3-axis gimbal and a smartphone, you're probably looking around close to 500 grams, about close to 1 pound, right? So maybe a gimbal on a smartphone, not smartphone, action camera, like something like a GoPro, a gimbal and a GoPro, maybe that might be light enough. You're probably still at about 400 grams, 350, 400 grams, so it's doable. It's definitely doable. Then there's the cameras like the DJI Osmo Pocket 2, Filmy Palm 2, and then like the IdolCam, 3-axis gimbal. So these are integrated camera units, right? So they kind of fit in the middle between the EIS and the gimbal, the dedicated gimbal, because it's lighter. The camera, I mean the 3-axis gimbal, usually a lot smaller. On the DJI Osmo 2 and the Filmy Palm 2, their 3-axis gimbal is tiny. It may be like less than an ounce, right? Just the camera unit. So it's not an issue. There's not so much weight that's added to the camera system. It's actually tiny. Only thing is when you're carrying it, you have to be careful, because of it is there's 3 motor in there. It turns it, you know, there's 3 axis in there. So if you're not careful, you could damage the camera. So that's one bad thing about it. But you know, for vlogging, you're not gonna be jumping. You're not gonna be you know, throwing the camera everywhere. As a action camera, then I think EIS makes a lot of sense, because there's no moving part, so it's more tougher as a camera. But for vlogging, it depends on your TIG, right? If you want the best image quality out of the camera, then a gimbal setup would give you the best quality, given that they are using the same sensors. A EIS, then you lose a little bit of image quality, and then it gets a little tighter. And then the stabilization, generally the 3-axis gimbal will give you a little bit better stabilization generally. So you know, that's the main breakdown of these stabilization for vlogging. So gimbals are not only amazing for stabilizations, they're also a very useful tool, because you could have a gimbal mimic the movements of camera cranes. So they could lock the horizon, they could lock the tilt axis, so when you move up and down, it acts like a camera crane. And then you could also lock the horizon. Right now I could roll the camera left and right, it locks the horizon. Then you could have these cameras, the gimbal, to do these time lapse. So you could typically you would need another device called a time lapse motor head, and with the 3-axis gimbal you don't need that device. You just have the gimbal perform that same task. So not only are you doing time lapse, the lens was slowly moving, so you get a more dynamic type of time lapse. Then some of the cameras like the DJI Osmo Pocket and the Filmic 2, Filmy Palm 2, yeah, so they also have a subject tracking. So actually, you know, wherever you move, the lens will actually follows the subject. So that's some of the really amazing thing about gimbal. So it's not only for stabilization, it actually turns your camera into a much much more useful device, right? So this pretty much wraps up all I have to say about image stabilization. So I hope this helps you pick the perfect camera for your needs. So I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.